bantu sumita ya jama kanumo sumita nare na yade kanumo saketa ya jama kanumo saketa maluma na ya jama safwe arafat fwe na kwa nawe nare na yade Bese muzima rikatawaze Safwe arafata sumana seme baba dunia jede Abu badulu mokarabu banati na kulu ajama dunia jede File ni rumo gile bisuku moje binia wede sunu Kan file ni rumo gisoso mo gile bisima vazi mabo fajama Nasi mama dole umo abaki na jidiwe inabiso kefin Samawe kalte ya jamaa Mama gero nyere kusakare kiso malaya wede sunu nanana Itade umurda ke kalasi futu rikata waze Nasi mama de umoge abaji di umojuele wede sunu nanana
Mabibi na mabwana, hamjambo na karibuni. Mesdames, messieurs, soyez les bienvenus à l'Alliance française de Nairobi. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Alliance Française de Nairobi. But I think more suited to give us a word of introduction to the evening is the director of the Alliance Française, Monsieur Charles Courdon.
Merci John. Mesdames et messieurs, bonsoir. Salam alaikum. Good evening, and I'm very, very happy to have you tonight as the director of Alliance Française. Such a beautiful, beautiful costume, clothes, tradition. It's really wonderful, really. I feel ashamed with my old style kind of suit. I'm really feel ashamed. It's so beautiful, full of color, full of energy. I'm very happy to welcome you this evening, Excellencies. I think we'll have a very interesting debate. I'm very interested by this question of Nubi. Just a few words to introduce Alliance Française. Alliance Française is not Française, is a Kenyan institution, registered in Kenya. And we are very happy to be a member of the huge, sorry. That's to remind you to disconnect your phone. Okay, so if you can put it like me now in silent, it would be better. So Alliance Française, we are a network of more than 800 institutions all around the world, together with the French Institute. And we are all local institutions. So in Kenya, we are registered in Kenya. And Alliance Française of Nairobi, one of the most important in the world, very strangely, because we have around 3,200 different students, and we organize more than 400 cultural events a year. So we are open to all different style of culture. We do concert, music, theater, debates, and book launch. And I'm very happy to be here in this library and to thank the team of the library with the director, Denis, and the technical team to welcome you. We do more than 54 book launches per year, so it is a place where we want to promote culture, to promote publishing, and especially Kenyan publishing. So I won't be long, but I think that there's very interesting things to come. I know you are in good hands because my friend John C.B. Okumu is not only a very good French speaker and an English speaker, but also, and Swahili of course, but also a very interesting guy to moderate this discussion. So be welcome, and I know that after this session there will be a cocktail organized in the garden, so I'm sure we'll have a very good evening together. Merci beaucoup. Asante sana.
Ladies and gentlemen, as you've heard, my name is John. The surname is Sibi Okumu. I am a broadcast journalist. A shorter way of saying that is that I'm a TV presenter. The Odyssey of the Nubi, from soldiers of the British Empire to full citizens in Uganda. The title of a book which was written by Dr. Moses Ali, the Right Honorable General, retired in September last year, September the 1st to be precise. Since then, it has traveled a journey which has seen not only the 305-page adult version, but also, most recently, an abridged, simplified version expressly for children in schools, which fills in a gap which speaks to all of us on the continent as a way of recording our history, where we came from, where we are, and where we're going. So this is a seminal work, and it's fitting that we should be made aware of the existence of a book like this in Kenya, for obvious reasons. The word Nubi speaks to us here in Kenya, but the word Nubi could equally speak to us in South Sudan, in Tanzania, in Uganda, in the whole of this Central African region. Now, I have a similar book in my library, and they're books that talk about the history of the Kikuyu, the history of the Luo, and normally they talk about origin, the names of clans, cuisine, various segments in various centuries. I read this book, and my first acquaintance with it was to write a review for one of our newspapers. I wrote a review of this book, a very positive review for a newspaper called The Star. And I said that there are so many interconnections that the debate engendered by this book ought to concern us all. So, to continue by way of introduction, the foreword to this book was written by Bart M. Katurebe, Chief Justice Emeritus of the Republic of Uganda. And in the preface, the author declares that he presents, in his own words, an antithesis of a community that has for quite long been misrepresented, disregarded, and betrayed by the emerging democratic dispensation. strong words, negative words, misrepresentation, disregard, betrayal. For those of you who have not read the book, I think first of all it bears saying that this is not the forum in which to unpack the subjects raised. We'd need a week-long seminar, we'd need a month-long colloquy to do the book justice. But as it turns out, we're going to have 1 hour in this room. We're going downstairs to be treated to some delicious Nubian cuisine and some artifacts, cultural artifacts, and we're going to have an hour to mingle and talk to each other about what we've just heard. So my instruction is to go from now, which is 6:35, to I presume it will be 7:35, and then we'll go downstairs. Chapter headings. Sorry. Oh, yes. When should we take that break? Oh, okay. We have to take a break for prayers before we begin. That's better. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very much. I think we got to the stage where I was reading from my notes, actually, and I quoted the author as declaring that he presents in his own words an antithesis of a community that has for quite long been misrepresented, disregarded, and betrayed by the emerging democratic dispensation. I keep on repeating that because as journalists, that is going to be the through line for my interrogation throughout. I'm basically going to be asking my panelists, if the author thinks that's what the book is about, what do you think about what he thinks? That kind of conundrum. So, to give you an insight, some chapter headings. 9 chapters. Chapter 1, the Nubi, origin, migration, settlement. Chapter 1 of our 305 pages. Chapter 2, Chapter 2, the Islamic influence of the Nubi in Uganda. Chapter 3, natives or settlers, the unresolved Nubi identity debate. Chapter 4, the 19th century Nubian mutiny, 1897 to 1902. Chapter 5, Nubian pangs in independent Uganda, Part 1, 1962 to 1971. Chapter 6, the Nubi under Idi Amin's Uganda, 1971 to 1979. Chapter 7, the emergence of the Uganda National Liberation Front, a cruel twist to the Nubi fate. Chapter 8, the Obote II government, 1981 to 1985, and the Nubi stance, ramifications, actions, and response. Chapter 9, the West Nile region and the Nubi, the restoration of rights under the NRM, which is a period significantly when the Nubi community in Uganda was recognized for the first time as full citizens within the Republic. So, if you want to know more and wish to read the book yourselves, I'm sure it's available, but perhaps we have something like 25 copies, and I can announce that they will be sold at Kenya shillings 4,000 only, somewhere here tonight. So, my panelists, looking to my left and to your right, therefore, I guess, we have Madame Enafofuni, General Secretary of the Uganda Nubi Language Board. You can give her a round of applause. Next to her is Madame Zam Obed Hassan, a woman leader, she describes herself as. Then there is me in the middle. My name is John Sibi Okumu. I can't stand up. Next to me is Siama Ismail, Nubian Cultural Ambassador. And last, but by no means least, we have scholar Mahmoud El Haj Yusuf. He obviously has a fan club. Former chairman of the New Sudan and South Sudan Islamic Council. So, this is how it's going to be. We're going to have something like 40 minutes worth of discussion. When the book was launched in September last year, a gentleman who was crucial to that event, a scholar, an intellectual, who was part of the editing process of the book, is here with us tonight. And as happens with the human body, especially with the current weather, rain, flooding, and all of that, there is a great fear that he might just lose his voice if I ask him to speak incessantly for the next 40 minutes. So I have persuaded him to do one thing to make me happy, and he is very readily obliged. He is going to take us back to the speech that Dr. Moses Ali gave at the launch of the book. And in the absence of the Doctor General retired himself, the closest we can get to hearing his voice, and by extension receive his blessings for this evening, is to ask you, sir, Doctor, if you'd be so kind as to read that speech.
Thank you. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, as you may realize, we don't have a lot of time, so I'm just going to read the speech verbatim. It is my utmost pleasure to welcome you to grace this occasion, an occasion that is significant to all of us as Nubi people and those interested in the history of the Nubi. An occasion to share the story about the Nubi and their past, a story that began some time back, and I am delighted that we are here to share with you. This book is entitled The Odyssey of the Nubi, from soldiers of the British Empire to full citizens in Uganda. In this book, General Moses Ali, have tried to capture the basics of the Nubi story from their initial interaction with the colonial power Britain to their eventual recognition as full citizens of Uganda. It is a painful history of heroism, determination, and resilience in a revolving world of colonial subjugation, wars, domestic warfare, and finally, peace. You yourselves, the readers, can go through the book in your own time, chapter by chapter. But I'm going to limit my remarks to the holistic story in the book without its distractions of detail. The key questions most people ask are, who are the Nubi? Often referred to as Nubians by English speakers. Where did they come from? Obviously, these are difficult questions that demand much research and history. Let me answer very briefly for you what I have managed to gather in the book. In the hunt for slaves long before the 19th century, slave hunters from the Middle East and from the Turco-Egyptian Empire set up slave raiding forces who penetrated our part of Africa following the Nile from Egypt. As they came up the Nile from Egypt, they picked up the Nubians of the Nubian desert in Egypt, of course, from the banks of the river Nile. As they entered Sudan, they picked up relatives of the Egyptian Nubians, the Dongolawi people, in northern Sudan. Among these was one Salim Bey. It is most probable that slave hunters ventured westwards from Khartoum and picked up some of the Nuba people from the Nuba mountains, both as slaves and eventually slave soldiers. In addition to the supply of slaves found in southern Sudan, the brief rule of the Belgians in the so-called Lado enclave added a bigger slave territory which included today's West Nile tribes in Uganda. There might not have been much to this story without the Mahdiya in Sudan around the 1888 to 1898. The fall of the Mahdiya resulted in a number of soldiers leaving for southern Sudan. This provided a ready-made body of men as experienced soldiers for both the explorers of the Nile and the British government as it sought to acquire territory. Of course, it's about this time, in the last quarter of the 19th century, that the British sent on Captain Lugard to Uganda to consolidate its powers over the tribes of Uganda. Lugard knew of the experienced Sudanese slave soldiers and recruited more from the territories noted for their brave men. With these men, now increasingly known as the Sudanese Nubi, Lugard militarily took control of Buganda. At about the same time, there were other competitive kings who were not shy about demonstrating their military power. Among these native kings of Uganda was one Kabalega of Bunyoro. Unfortunately for Kabalega, the Nubi soldiers were a force to reckon with as they helped Buganda and the British to subdue Bunyoro, which was his kingdom. So to cut a long story short, the British continued to subdue the rest of Uganda under their domain using the Nubi soldiers. Now, once the colonies were pacified, the Nubi began to convert from a mobile military force to become settled farmers, businessmen, and administrators. So those who remained in the army formed the backbone of the King's African Rifles, known as KAR, and later the Uganda Army. Now comes the tough narrative of our time. Africa in general has become used to identifying citizens by their tribal identity. Due to the Nubi being a collection of many tribes in modern-day Sudan and South Sudan, Congo, and Uganda, many began to question their identity on the basis of a native land. Any examination of modern-day citizenship will expose the various methods by which any person or group becomes citizens of a country. So the modern existence of countries having citizens without being natives, including the United States of America, Canada, South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, etc., voids the questioning of Nubi citizenship without land association. So for the sake of brevity, though true, the many Nubi originate from outside Uganda over 100 years ago, millions of them are natives of Uganda as we speak. So it should be noted that the questioning of Nubi citizenship has been based on politics rather than objective reality. So I'm reading it quickly because I don't. Native frictions in Uganda also took center stage in the politics, or in its politics, thus producing allegations about factionalism, that is after the colonial period, pro-Amin and pro-Obote wings of the factions. The Nubi, the Kakwa, West Nile, and Muslims became the generalized enemies of Uganda to the pro-Obote narrative. Whereas there may have been negative actions by some bad elements in the Nubi community that led to conflicts and reprisals in the West Nile region and other parts of the country, we condemn their actions and duly apologize for the wrongs that they may have committed. It should be noted that their actions were or are not a reflection, nor are they a representation of the Nubi community, who are largely Muslims and are advocates of peace, as attested by their greetings, Assalamu alaikum, which means peace be upon you. Thus, when the Uganda National Liberation Front, UNLF, in collusion with the Tanzania People's Defense Forces, TPDF, overran the country, it was seen as a conquest over the Nubi, the Kakwa, and the people of West Nile, including the Muslims as a whole. So this conception of the enemies of Uganda as defined by the Uganda National Liberation Front wreaked havoc among the perceived enemies of Obote. Both Tanzanian forces and Obote's forces destroyed so much life and property of those they identified as their enemies that one could describe the anti-Obote groups as facing a total threat to their existence. So we did not take this hostility lying down, as many of you here may have known. We formed the Uganda National Rescue Front to resist this tyranny. So within a short time, we realized that there were others who faced a similar situation with ours, namely the National Resistance Movement and its forces, the National Resistance Army. Last but not least, as the saying goes, our cooperation with the National Resistance Movement resulted in the glorious inclusion of the Nubi as natives in the 1995 Constitution of Uganda. The Odyssey of the Nubi is a humble attempt to capture the above narrative. I hope future researchers will amplify and add to our narrative. I wish to end by thanking all those, too many to name, who cooperated in production of this book. Last but not least, let me thank all those who will acquire and read this book. And to you who are here with us in this gathering, a big thank you. God bless you, for God and my country.
Thank you very much, Daktari. You've set us up to continue.
Thank you.
Moderating sessions like this is always a teachable moment for those of you who want to do what I do. And that is that you meet people for the first time. You've never seen them before. You're introduced to them to yourself and vice versa. And you're told that you're going to be having a discussion. The thing to do when everybody's arrived is to say we have to start somewhere. And the basic rules are these. There are 4 of you. Please respect each other so that I don't have to interrupt you and look rude myself. Rule number 2 is that if you think that somebody has answered a question adequately, please don't repeat the same thing, because we've heard it once and we've understood, so we must move on. And leave it to me, as a professional, to keep the conversation going. So, the very first thing that bears is to give them some idea of where you're going to start. So, you give them what is likely to be the first question. And then from then on, the second question, maybe, the third question, maybe, and then you will note from then on that we are thinking on our feet. I'm thinking on my feet, they're thinking on their feet. It takes on a dynamic of its own. So my first question, and it only serves the purpose for you, what my panelists sound like. That's what it achieves. You just hear, oh gosh, that lady there sounds like that, he sounds like that, job done. My first question to my panel is, why is this an important book? Why should I buy it? Why should I read it? What's it got to do for me? And we're going to go in order, of not of any size, from that side to that side. Why is this an important book, in your estimation?
Thank you very much.
Oh my gosh, I haven't introduced my panel, have I?
You did.
Oh gosh, okay, right. Panel, wonderful.
The Odyssey of the Nubi is a very important book because it's the first comprehensive account of its kind by a Nubi about the Nubi. Because when you look at such a very organized tribe with its contribution to the formation of East Africa and Africa at large, it is really a disservice that when other people are writing about the Nubi, they only mention sentences, paragraphs. Yet we are a very organized group with our culture, with our everything. We are just very organized. So when you look at this book and you read it comprehensively, you get to know who the Nubi are in East Africa. And that is why I think Jeno thought it right to write the Odyssey of the Nubi, that even our great-grandchildren can get to know about the origin of the Nubi. So I implore each of us to read this book and we get to know about our culture. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we'll spare the uproarious applause until the end. You know why? Because then there'll be a kind of competition now to see who gets the most applause. Please just kindly listen, and you can congratulate us all at the end. Madam.
Good evening. Hello. The Odyssey of the Nubi is a very important book in the community of the Nubian right now. Because as it is, the community of the Nubi, most of the generation who are coming, they don't know who they are. They don't know their identity. And the information which is out here is distorted. So most of the generation, we call it Generation Z, they don't know about who they are. If they are asked, who are you? That's the hardest question they get to face. But after reading this book, they know their origin, they know why they are here in Kenya, why they have other Nubians in Uganda, Somali, and Congo. So the Odyssey of the Nubi is a very important book for today, tomorrow, and the future. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The Odyssey of the Nubi. This book is a book that most probably half of 3/4 of it might be talking about Uganda and the Nubians in Uganda. But the truth is, it is a book that talks about the Nubian history in general. So for me, I find that it is very, very important because especially for the, like Zam says, Generation Z, because they don't know much about their history, and not just them, even us. There's some history that we don't know. Then the kind of information that we have is, of course, distorted. But the book is actually the beginning of Nubian literature that most probably at the end of the day will be compiled together and then talks generally about the Nubian history on its own, and not just the Nubian history in one area, because we are one, the language is the same, it has never changed, and maybe just a little bit of addition here and there, but the history is still the same, whether it is for that Nubian in Uganda, or the Nubian in Kenya, or in Tanzania, or wherever they may be. So this book, I think, is the beginning, and it's very, very important. I should say that if a person can afford it, you have it with you, so that we get to know our history more.
Assalamu alaikum. History is written by the winners, and we read for Captain Logat about Nubi, and we read Stanley. He wrote a book also. Sagayron, he wrote a book, but there is no Nubian who wrote a book about what happened to Nubi, the history of Nubi. And this is the first time that a Nubian man or a Nubi Arab intellectual wrote a book about Nubi and what happened to them during the past 1 century. And this is the importance of the book, because it is written from the perspective of the Nubian, not perspective of the other people. Because Captain Logat, maybe he may be a bit fair, but not to such an extent to elaborate what is the grievances felt by the Nubians. And Sagayron, although he was a Sudanese scholar, and his book was very important. I read it in 1992. But when I read this book, I felt there are a lot of things missing by Sagayron, because Sagayron was not living the events, the impact of the events, because he's, as a Sudanese, he came from Khartoum, but his father, grandfather were not living the impact of the mutiny, for example, in 1897, and the events which happened during the past period. That is the importance of the book to be read.
Thank you very much. Moving on, this question is, I want to display my ignorance. Before I read this book, my assumption is that the Nubi are ours, they're Kenyan. They live in a place called Kibra, which we used to call Kibera before we saw the light. And that Kibra means forest. And the Nubi came to Kenya as mercenaries fighting for the British. And to reward them for the part they'd played, they were given a huge piece of land. I'm explaining it now to a 5-year-old. They were given a huge piece of land and told, thank you, you can live here forever. After independence, there was a rapacious desire to grab some of that land, so that what was originally 20 acres became 10, became 5, I'm explaining it to a 5-year-old, until it became next to nothing. And we're going to move on to the notion of persecution. In other words, what was given to them was taken away, and they had to fight, and are still fighting, for full recognition, not to be given a rough time of it when they want identity cards, not to be... In other words, the idea of persecution was a running narrative. Now, members of my panel, you have come from South Sudan, Uganda, and I'm going to ask you to fill in a gap for me. If you are one people, why are you so scattered? Or is that a silly question? Okay. Now the free-for-all is jetting in. He'll say a bit, you can say, no, that's rubbish, this is the right answer, and then we'll go from here.
Okay. We are one people from the essence that we are coming from Kush Kingdom. We are descendants of Kush Kingdom. But if we trace how we come to be collectively being together, Muhammad Ali Pasha, the ruler of Egypt, he was in need of soldiers. So he sent his son Ismail in 1820, and he recruited Sudanese from Fonj area, South Blue Nile, from Nuba Mountains, from Darfur, from Northern Sudan. And he formed his soldiers, his army, to fight in Saudi Arabia, the Saudi kingdom, the first Saudi kingdom. Then later on, he opened the route towards South Sudan and built a fort at Equatorial region at Gondokoro. You see, then he tried to recruit the army recruit some tribesmen. And because most of them were Muslims, so they recruit, and those being recruited from different tribes like Baria, Fojulu, and they became also Muslim until they withdraw with Amin Basha towards Uganda, and as the story we know. So the army, which were in Turkish, were being lent by Turkish to Germany, because when Germany colonized Tanganyika, they felt they were not, they cannot survive the hardship of the climate in Tanganyika. So they asked the Sultan of Ottoman Empire to lend them some army. So they lent them some Sudanese who fought in Tanganyika. That is the reason why some Sudanese were in Tanganyika. And even the Sultan, he lent the Emperor Napoleon III some Sudanese who went to Mexico and fought there and returned back also. So the Sudanese scattered. In those of Uganda were being brought to Kenya here. Some of them formed King African Rifles, 3rd Battalion. Those in Uganda formed the King African Rifles, the 4th Battalions. So that is the reason why there are Nubians in Uganda, Nubians in Kenya, Nubians in Tanganyika. But originally, they are from the different tribes of Sudan and related to Kushan Kingdom. That is in summary.
Is that adequate?
Yeah, but to supplement on that, I can briefly say that given the fact that the Nubi came as soldiers and it was during the British conquest of East Africa, so everywhere that the British were conquering, they had to reward the Nubians. So in a bid to reward them, that's what led to their scattering in everywhere that the British conquered, so as to strengthen their territories. Thank you.
So the biggest population would be in Uganda. If you're talking numerically, where are the most Nubis in this world?
Yeah, in Uganda.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So thank you. I'm looking at my clock, and we have to stop soon. But let's keep on going. Madame Zam, again, appealing to you as a mama, as a woman, I'm hearing that soldiers are moving from place to place and obviously just doing a job. Were they given the latitude to travel with their partners everywhere they went? Or did they send for them? Because one would assume that at some point the men are going to be left all on their own. How does that integration happen, that gender within the community?
The Sudanese Nubi, when they were helping the British in their conquest of East Africa, mostly Uganda and Kenya, they used to get along with their women. And at one point, one of the measures from the British imperialists was like, we don't want you to go with your women. And that is one of the reasons why there was a mutiny against the Briton. Because these women, they help the Nubi soldiers in cooking, they help them in fetching firewood, they nurse them when they are injured, and at some point, they went to war with them, helping them in war.
Thank you. I'm going to turn to you. Again, we're looking at the cohesiveness of the society. We're looking at a chapter on the central role of Islam as a part of the fabric. How does one sustain one's faith in constant movement, surrounded by people who either don't believe the same thing and are drawn to a certain prejudice because they don't believe what you believe? And I don't know whether the general addresses it full on in his book.
if there is one thing that has always kept the Nubians intact, if there's one thing that has always led them into war, it's religion. And when they came as Muslims, they never changed their religion. In fact, they managed to revert other communities into becoming Muslims because that is what they believed in. And religion has also played a major role in the wars. Because whenever they went into war, they would pray first. And this one made the British respect the Nubians very much, because there was no way they could go into war without praying first. So most of the times when it came to prayer time, and I'll give a good example like here, we could not begin this session without first going to perform the Maghrib prayers. That is what kept the Nubi community very strong when they came, and their faith never changed. In fact, when they intermarried on their way, like they married from other communities, the Acholi, the Bunyoros, as they were coming, their wives also converted into Islam, and that is how the community is largely Islam.
Thank you. Scholar.
Yeah, I want to add to this regarding the religious factor, for Islamic factor for the Nubians. As I said, the Nubians, the origin of the Nubians, they came from 3 kingdoms. The Funj kingdom, which ruled for 650 years in South Blue Nile. And the Funj was an Islamic kingdom. Also, some of Nubians, they're from the Borno. The Borno was a kingdom from Lake Chad up to the River Nile. It lasted for 800 years. It was an Islamic kingdom also. Among the kingdom also, the 4 kingdom. The 4 lasted for 400 or 500 years. It was Islamic. And until now, 4 tribes among the most religious, where those who can recite the Quran, are where you can get much people who memorize Islam, Quran, you see, more than Iran, you see, in the concentrations. That is the reason why when they were recruited, and they were recruited by the Muhammad Ali Pasha, you see, the Turkish, and they were Muslim also. And until they came to Gondokoro, to Equator, and to Uganda, they were collectively intact as a Muslim group. And when they came, they were not under British. They were under the Egyptians' Turkish rule. And they were supposed to go with Amin to Egypt through Mombasa. But Stanley got a plan, because he needs this force in Congo. Amin also needs this force as a German to recruit them in West Africa. That's the reason why he came back, and even Lugar knows that Amin was around. And he was scared that he was afraid he will be delayed to reach before Amin can take the Nubi. But when he reached, Selim Bey told him that Amin left before 3 days, and he refused to go with him because he was in obligations towards the Khedive of the Egypt, you see. And Lugar convinced him that there is a strong tie between Britain and Egypt. And he told him that he's going to write a letter to Khedive, and if he refused to allow the Nubians to work with British, he is going to send them to Egypt. You see, this point is very important, and it shows that Selim Bey and the Nubians in Uganda, when they met in 1891, they were not intended to work in Uganda with the British, but they want to go back to Egypt, you see, because that Islamic tide, you see, that Islamic oath which they swear when they were being recruited, you see. So it shows the depth of Islamic factor among the Nubian Muslims.
Thank you very much. with respect, as we've said, I'm going to annoy you intensely because as a scholar, we cannot enter into the depth of your knowledge with such detail. We don't have the time. What I'm saying to you as panelists is that I'm sharing my inbuilt prejudices with you. I think I'm a well-read person, but we're all poisoned with certain perceptions. So over and over again, we're leading everybody here present who may be Nubi, those who are not, to the book, to the 305 pages. So I'm going to go back to you again. I've still got these words that I want to get out of my system. I want to get Obote, I want to get Amin, I want to get the invasion out of my system, because that's what I know about the general history of it. And I'm wanting to find out from you, first of all, why did the general refer to disregard, misrepresentation, and betrayal? Why are these the three prongs of the Nubian narrative as perceived by the author? And he's very humble. He says, I haven't done it all. May others follow and take on. But I don't see my own people as being the products of betrayal, disregard, and misrepresentation. So why you? Maybe that's a question for everybody.
I can start by stating that, you see, at the end of 19th century, there was a poem by Kabler, you see. He said, the white man burden. The white man burden. So we Africans are the white man burden. The Asians and Australians, Aborigine, the same, you see. So for Lugard, when he contacted the Nubians led by Salim Bey, they were dealing with great dignity, you see, as equal partners. Even Lugard told Salim, I'm a captain. I cannot give you a rank more than captain, you see, but you deserve more, but I don't have the authority. That's the reason why he gave Salim Bey the rank of captain, you see. But when MacDonald came as Major MacDonald and took over from Lugard, he came with that white man burden and started looking towards Salim and the Nubians as a lower class, you see. That perceptions, even when the Nubians been brought to Kenya here, the settlers forced the army that the Nubians should not wear shoes, you see, because they felt that if they wear shoes, they will give an impression to the locals that they are equal like the white. So they want to undermine them, you see. And that the Nubian starts feeling that there is a sense of betrayal from the British. Because when they met with Lugard at the beginning, there was some sort of equality, you see, and justice for the treatments they were expected to get from the British. But later on, things start changing because you see, Lugard maybe we cannot judge for why Lugard, how Lugard, when he was talking with Salim, is he was faithful, you see, or he was just trying to cheat him, you see, or it was just a policy director to convince him, you see. But it was clearly afterwards that, you see, those officials who came later on, they were looking towards the Nubians as second-class citizens or third-class citizens. And the British had the first, and then the Indians, and then the Nubians. While when they were with the Turkish were treating them as equal citizens. And Sudanese, you see, Christian in particular, they regard the dignity higher, you see. And that's the reason many issues, and there's no time for me to speak about them.
Thank you. I'm going to stick to my plan. I want all my panelists to speak. Please say something in your turn in response to that question. And we've got another 15 minutes.
To me, I think why the author talks of misrepresentation and betrayal is that when they talk of Amin's regime in Uganda, they associate Amin with the Nubi. And they believe it was full of atrocities. So when they look at everything that Amin's soldiers did in Uganda, they just look at it as the Nubi. They are the ones who are responsible for that. So everyone labeled the Nubi as that bad. So that is why the author, General Moses Ali, comes out clearly to distinguish between the Nubi and Amin soldiers. And the Nubi have been betrayed a lot because of associating them with the atrocities of Amin government. That's what I can say.
I will talk about betrayal. The author, General Moses Ali, says the Nubian felt betrayed. This betrayal comes in different types because, as my colleague has said, Selim Bey and Captain Lugard, they had an agreement. They had an agreement that we are equal partners. But at some point, after Captain Lugard was called back to Britain, MacDonald, who came, really disregarded the Nubians. Like, he gave them jobs, manual jobs. He could, somebody, he's not experienced. So he goes to an experienced person like Selim Bey and start harassing this person. So, like in the Nubi language, we have a saying, Aksen mutu min aib. That saying says, it's basically, it's better I die than I feel ashamed. That is why we feel disregarded, betrayed, and misinterpreted.
Madam.
Talk of betrayal. And I'm comparing the book, the betrayal in the book, with the current Nubi situation. Talk of misrepresentation. I'm also comparing the same in the book with the current Nubian situation. Because if you look at the Nubian community now, talk of betrayal. How have we been betrayed? You see, from history, the British have betrayed us. They gave us, they kind of like encouraged us and gave us, I don't know what to say about that, but they kind of encouraged us and like kind of made us feel like we are part of the land that they have made us settle in. But at the end of the day, they took off and left us. So, you know, we are like hanging. That is how they betrayed us. If you talk of misrepresentation, look at the current situation that the Nubian communities is living in. You see, I think even in Uganda, the Nubians are far much better off than the Nubians in Kenya and in Tanzania. We don't have proper representation. Why? Because of the betrayal by the British settlers or by the white man who brought us here. So you see, they left things hanging.
Sorry,
and that is the way
could I, just for all of you, are we as Africans laying the blame for everything that's wrong with the society that we have 60 years into independence on the white man, on the Mzungu? If it hadn't been for the Mzungu, we'd all be fine. Is it impossible for Africans themselves to arrive at dispensations of respect and self-regard?
You see, this is a very complicated issue because you see, Nubians.
I'm asking you to generalize. Speak for me as well.
Yeah.
Your story is terrible.
Yeah.
I'm sad. Yes, but what about me?
You see, we as Africans, we are supposed to treat ourselves equally. That is obvious.
Right.
See? But as Africans, in the same times, we are questioning the ethnicity. Where are you from? What is your size? What is your influence? How can you affect the election? For example, in 1966, the constituency of Kibra was supposed to be won by one of the Nubians. But Kano brought someone, you see, the white, what's his name? Leakey, Richard Leakey.
Philip.
Yeah, Leakey, you see. So instead of the Nubians, Leakey, you see, was nominated and he won the seat, you see. And although the constituency was belonged to Nubians, and if Nubians was being elected, that could have consolidated their positions within the Kenyan politics and within the Kenyan society, you see, because he can serve the community from the parliament, you see. And as Africans, of course, we are not supposed to take it as examples of what happened in another country. When Amin took power in Uganda, the Kenyan got scared, you see, because the same thing which happened in Uganda could happen in Kenya. So the policy was to reduce the Nubians from influential positions, particularly in the army, you see. And even Nimeri, and he was supposed to feel that after sympathy with the Nubians of Uganda because they came from Sudan. But no, he supported Nyerere when Nyerere invaded Uganda, and he was the chairman of African Union. He didn't condemn that, you see. Whether Amin was whatever Amin did, but that was wrong for Tanzanians to invade Uganda, you see. Such policies, you see, it emerged from where? You see.
I'd like to ask one last question to the whole panel, and then I think we ought to involve you. So at the risk of being kicked out by the Alliance Française, here's the last question to the panel. And I'm going to ask you, chapter 9 of, I've read the book, I've reviewed the book, so I've read the book. The idea of the West Nile region and the future. Are we going to leave this room feeling that the Nubi people to this day are persecuted, betrayed, misrepresented, and they should be really thinking of going elsewhere and forming a republic of their own on some land in the Sahara Desert? Or does the future bode well? There are young people in this room. Are you urging them to see themselves as persecuted human beings?
To me, I would concur with you. I would say yes. We are betrayed. We are oppressed. We are misrepresented in all the countries where the Nubi are. Because when you look at in Uganda, look at the number of parliaments we are having, look at the number of ministers we are having. How many Nubi do we have? We are really betrayed. We are misrepresented. But
the argument could work that in the democratic dispensation, there are too few of you to make a difference at the ballot. You should be blaming yourselves for not voting yourselves in.
No.
Surely, yes?
When you look at the geographical demarcations, when you look at, now let's look at an example like Bombo, where the biggest number of Nubians are found. When you look at that, we also have the Baganda, okay? So the government would help us in a way that they would give us something like a constituency of our own. The what they are doing in the other parts of the country. You find when you go to Western Uganda, they are breaking. You find every 2 sub-counties make up a constituency. They're favoring those people. Why can't they do the same to the Nubian? Why can't they do the same? So you cannot say that it's the ballot. No, it is having an upper hand. So, and we cannot resort and say that we go and settle elsewhere. No, it's our motherland. We fought for it. Our grandfathers came as soldiers. We must enjoy our nation the way others are enjoying it. We must fight for our right up to the last minute.
Gosh, I might see myself bringing you some milk in jail, but okay, I'll see if I can go up to that. Madam.
The issue of the Nubi.
The future.
The future.
That's the key word.
The future of the Nubi. The future of the Nubi should be made by the Nubians. And if we start dwelling on what has happened before, we will not go anywhere. We have to pick up the pieces and start where we can. Like, for example, in Kenya, Kibra. Kibra was mainly a Nubian place. In Kibra, we started this thing of Jenga Yako, Jenga Yangu. And the local chiefs are the ones who brought this issue up. And then Kibra became a cosmopolitan area. And right now, if we say a Nubian will stand for a political seat, we cannot match the other communities because they are more than us. So we have been marginalized. And due to this marginalization, the government has to give us a say, like a place, seats. There are seats in the government which are given to the marginalized communities, but the Nubians have not been recognized as such. We are waiting for December the 12th to see what the president promised, if it comes into tick.
Madam.
I think they said some 2 points that I wanted to say, but I'll still emphasize on that. One, our numbers. We are few. We are a minority community if you compare us to the rest of the other communities. And yes, at some point I always sit down and say maybe if we are compensated, just in case our land is compensated, because like now the Kibra was around 4,197 point something acres, but now it's a fraction, just less than 5% of what we had. That is 288 acres. But I always sit down and say, like, maybe in the future they'll give us all the 4,197 acres, which is the size of Kibra constituency as it is now. But then the problem is, if we are given that constituency, or we are compensated, and we are to put our own leader, yes, we can send a person, one of us to represent us politically, then again, we will have our own say as a minority community. But at the moment, we don't have that say. At the moment, we are like, our hands are like tied. At the moment, we are so marginalized that we cannot even stand up and speak for ourselves. Even if we did it like a civil society, or even if we took to the streets. Maybe our cries will be heard, jotted down somewhere, and that is the end, and as far as it will go.
Sir.
You see, what is future based on? Future is based on mainly maybe 2 factors or 3 factors: education and economics. Singapore, for example, in 1960, when Malaysia decided to separate from Singapore from Malaysia, the Prime Minister was crying because they don't have any economical capabilities, nothing. They were under zero. But now they are one of the leading countries. Why? Because they built on human resources, education. You see? They established themselves educationally in a proper way. You see? So for Nubians, the most important factor for future, to build it out of the ground for proper educations for the future generation. The children must be out of guided to
Does that
continue.
suggest then that you as a community are going to build your own schools and provide your own teachers, or you're also making that request of government to educate you?
These are, you see, let us go back to the Kibra school. It was built by the British in 1953, I think. Okay, 1953. If we say it is supposed to graduate every year 30, among those 30, they will continue that. After 20 may continue, and 10 may graduate from university every year. Since 1950s until now, 50 or 60, 70 years. How many graduates you could have? So Nubians supposed to sit down and discuss why we fail to give our children proper education. And how can we do that? You see? This should be after a symposium or a seminar or a discussion thereafter, so that you see children could be encouraged to continue their education and how they can continue their education, number one, you see. And then if the schools are not enough, how can we increase the school? Either by local initiative or pressing the government. The second issue is economical empowerment. There is the situations of Nubians in Uganda, I think, much better than in Kenya, is it? And in Kenya, most people, they are just depending on the renting of their rooms, you see? This is just for, which gives our earning for living, not for proper economical scheme. So people should think to contact banks, you see, either local or in the Gulf or anywhere, you see, to form societies, cooperatives, and to apply for loans and to invest either in the agriculture or in any sort, you see, so to generate money. Because through economical empowerment, people can change, you see. And that's the most important things people, Nubians should concentrate on it.
Education and economic empowerment. Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, given the powers vested unto me, we're having 2 questions from the floor. I hope you looked at yourself well in the mirror this morning when you woke up. Sorry, I'm going to define who the questions are going to come from. Sorry, I'm going to define whom the questions are going to come from. So keep your hands down. We have to stop. And this is how we're going to stop it. If you looked at your mirror in the morning and felt that you are a very young female representative of the Nubi community, would you please put your hand up? And if you looked at yourself in the mirror in the morning and think that you are a very young member of this community, would you put your hand up? Right, so we've got 2 questions. It's the gentleman behind you. We've got the 2 questions. Let me come and give them my blessing. One is that gentleman there in white, and one is the lady here. And when we've all, those are the 2. We have to stop. We have to stop. Who was she was here. Who was around here? Yes, right. 2 questions, and then we'll continue the conversation as we eat. Sounds like a good plan. Madam. And again, the whole panel has the right to respond to, you can see where I'm going with this. I'm giving the voice to the young because they represent the future. The rest of us are on our way out, literally and metaphorically. So, if you would.
Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum.
Sorry? Okay, you're confusing me now. My mind works very slowly. We'll hear from him at the end. Yes. Please, we finish, and nobody's kicking us out. We're just not playing to the cameras. This is the camera bit. We'll meet again next week. Question?
Thank you so much. Good evening. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Malasen Hamida Twahir from the Nubian community. For me, it's not basically a question. For me, what I see in the Odyssey of the Nubi is a story of hope and struggle. There's serious struggle within the reflections of the book, but finally there was a victory. The Nubi from Uganda are given citizenship in line with the reflections of the book. So what does it tell us? As much as we will struggle, we'll have to keep our heads up and be focused in order for us to conquer and to build resilience to the level that we become victors. We have struggled so much. When you look at the history, you feel that there's serious betrayal, there's serious misrepresentation, there's serious perceptions and biases up to date. But then, as a Nubian community, when I look at the reflection in Uganda and look at what is happening in Kenya, we are not different. And African communities are basically homogeneous. There's a way an African community, every tribe knows how to organize themselves and knows how to deal with their challenges and deal with their issues. And I believe this book actually gives that kind of reflection that indeed the Nubian community can actually work, can actually move beyond the boards, the odds, and make it to where they want. Because currently we are struggling with the citizenship issue in Kenya, but Ugandans are citizens. So according to the book, we need to just go back to the book and look into ways of actually solving our challenges that we're facing in Kenya. Economic empowerment is one thing, education is an equalizer. Thank you.
The young man, could you please follow up on that? Thank you. That was a comment, not a question. Sir.
Good evening. My name is Mohammed Aman from Kibra, and my question is basically following up from her comments, which has sort of led me in. And all of you, the panelists who are in front, have read this book cover to cover, as you've mentioned. Maybe some have done their own submissions on it. So when I look at that, the front page, it's very powerful. It says, from soldiers of the British Empire to full citizens in Uganda. That Uganda can as well be changed into Kenya. So for us who are looking at what can be done in Kenya, what is the roadmap? Because the powerful words we've had, the misrepresentation, the betrayal, all exist within this country in different forms, and the persecution is ongoing to now. But if we are to look at the future, what is the roadmap? Based on your own interactions with the book, what would you propose as the best possible way forward that can literally be taken a step from today if we're to go that direction, inshallah? Thank you.
The roadmap, the way forward. Okay, let's start again from you.
Thank you very
much.
much.
And I think it was specific to Kenya.
Me, what I'm looking at is you've talked about education, you've talked about Nubians have tried to educate their children, okay? Let's unite, let's come one. Because when you look at least where the Ugandan Nubi have reached, it's because of unity. Nubians, we are not united. This is just a call. Let's unite ourselves. All these strategies we are laying, people have them, but if we don't put them into practice, we can't. And then we need a political voice in Kenya as well. Please, I've been following the Kenyan politics, but among ourselves, let's have a self-reflection. Let's unite. If it is the Nubi, let's leave our differences aside, and we know that we are one name, we are one tribe, we are Nubi. Let's forget that this is bad, this is who, this is Rafiga, this is who. No, we are all Nubi. Thank you.
A community's quest for recognition has some aspects like socio-economic and political and education. And the other thing we need to do is unity. We must have a unification factor. If our main aim is getting recognized, that is our unification factor. And everything that divides us, we need to set it aside. Thank you.
You said earlier not to repeat what the others have said.
No, please don't.
Okay, I'll pass. I wanted to say unity.
No, don't say unity. Okay. Think of something else.
She said economic empowerment, we need that. as much as we need to be united. I'm sorry, I have to repeat that word again. You see, there's one thing that divides us. And what divides us is always a difference of opinion. You have your opinion, I have mine. But then when we sit down and pick out the common factors, of course, we'll always stay united. That is what I call for. Because if we unite, together, we move. Alone, you cannot. So at times, you even find that I am of a much older generation than Malasen, but I see my words as the last. But she has different ideas as a younger person. So if we can pick from, exchange, ideas, the young exchange with the old exchange with the young, and then we unite. Unity of purpose.
Yeah. Of course, throughout history, examples tell us that the unity is the basics for any stronger development or stronger influence. If we look at the Jews throughout the history, wherever they are always united. The Arabs, when they came to East Africa here, they are united. The Indians, the same. The Somalis now, if you can just imagine before 30 years, Isli was just only one tall building. But now, not only Isli, all the towns covered with the Somali investment. It came from where? From unity and how they can cooperate together, you see? But Nubians were in Kenya for the past 100 years, but they don't have any influence or impact economically or politically or culturally in the Kenyan society, you see? And regardless, if we compare the Kenyan society with the Ugandans, Uganda, there were no national language in Uganda until 1995, when Swahili was being adopted as a national language for Uganda. Because they were tribal language, but no, there was no any national language. In Kenya, there was national language, you see? And it was possible that for the Nubis to infiltrate within the society easily, not like in Uganda. But in Uganda, they succeeded. Why Kenyans cannot succeed? For one reason, the unity. How people can unite? That is the big question which people should ask and try to get a solution for it.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I was saying earlier that I have a radio show of my own here, and one of my guests to discuss this topic is the gentleman I'm going to ask to bring the evening to a close. And I'm also going to give you a huge task and put a lot of weight on your shoulders, is that if you think you want to empower somebody to say something more, it's up to you to make the call. But as far as I'm concerned, we'll let Dr. Kalebi talk and say a vote of thanks, if possible. And then we're going downstairs. Not so, Vanessa? Downstairs, down the stairs, where there are all sorts of goodies. And then you can talk to me, then you can talk to me again. There are delights in store. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My task is to give the vote of thanks. So I'll give the vote of thanks, and I know the program was such that we are supposed to go and interact freely over, I'm told, Nubian cuisine. So I think I won't ask anybody else to speak because we'd rather go and have the conversations. And we are quite a diverse group that we can have very good conversations. Hopefully I won't land with our scholar there because then you'll be here until midnight. But yeah. So let me start by first thanking the organizers of this event. This was supposed to be a book launch. And I will, before I thank them, there's a question that John, this is John by the way, Sibi Okumu. Don't hate him for what he says. He might have offended you, but that is his job. But he's a very nice guy. When you go out there, you realize He might still offend you, but he's a nice guy. So, but he asked a very important question. For those who have read the book, why will you, or what will you say so that other people can read the book? Will it be worth it? Literally, that's what you asked the panel. I read the book, and I'll tell you, you buy this book. Look for this book. I'm disappointed here there are only 20 copies or so, but I think this is a book that literally we should even do a harambe and buy and donate it to the schools and everybody else in Kibra to read. Because when I read it and actually got it a signed autograph, an autographed copy, but I was traveling to America, and one of my good friends then detained it there. So Baua, I'll be coming for another one. But I read it, and I can tell you the most important thing. Not only do you get despair reading the book, learning about how our forefathers had all those petty fights, and nothing worked. There was no unity. You get very much a lot of despair. But then at the same time, you get a lot of hope, as Malasen said. And what I really like about Baua's card, he said, we are cordially invited to attend the book launch event celebrating the esteemed career and latest literary contribution of the Right Honorable General Prime Minister, retired Dr. Moses Ali. I think for me, it's literally not an Odyssey of the Nubi. It's actually the journey of this great man. He's actually literally writing his own biography with a historical lens and telling us, I mean, I think he's 87 now, or 88. He just got his PhD doctorate last year. I think for me, I'm not young. I wanted to ask what do you define by young. Malasen is not young. She's more than 40. We are not young. But for the young people and all of us, so all of us are young in the context of retired general. We are all young relative to him. I think for us, he is a beacon. He represents something that you can't really describe, but just look at him. Despite all the difficulties he had, he became a general in the army. At a time when other people were obviously fighting for those positions, he became a prime minister, despite being from a marginalized community. He is a scholar, he is a writer, he is a member of parliament, despite all the gerrymandering. That's what we are talking about. So I think for me, this book I'm glad it's a first edition. It represents a man who speaks to all of us. In other words, we can rise above everything that has been thrown to us as a community. Our journey, the journey of our community through his lens. I think this is what we really want to show. So what I will say, for those who have not read the book, you gotta read this book. Not only is it rich in history, but it's so motivating, and he leaves a lot of things to say we can define ourselves even better. And I think that's really why you need to read this book. It's historical, it is motivational in so many ways. So for us is to celebrate the man, to celebrate the book. Go read this book. You really want to read this book. And without much further ado, I'll say I really want to thank Alliance Française. I can't see the director here, but they've always been wonderful. And I can see somebody from the French embassy. I won't mention his name because it wasn't mentioned here. So, but we really want to discuss going forward. What can we do? We're about to get recognition. You asked a very important question. When we look at ourselves as a community, the issue of non-representation and marginalization and the rest, should it be something that should remain for us? If you read the book, General is saying that is what keeps us going. It should keep us going, but without holding us back. Basically, that's what he's saying. So it actually is something that should fire us up, but at the same time not weigh us down. So all the answers to the things that you have asked, I know you have read the book, you even reviewed it, basically he was enticing you. John is a scholar himself. He's a teacher, by the way, you call him Mwalimu. Yeah? So he was actually basically prodding you guys to go read this book. The questions he was asking, you'll find those answers in this book. And I have some information that we can actually get help from people like Alliance Française, the French embassy, to write our own story. And here I'm talking about the Kenyan context of the Nubis in Kenya. This story ended up in Uganda, can we stretch it to Kenya? By the time we are getting recognition, one thing I like about the president, he's a man of his word. Good or bad, he's a man of his word. At least you have a good word. He says we're going to get recognition on 12th of December. I'm proud that I was actually in State House when I was asked, what do you guys want? And I said, look, we have to do it despite our disunity. Yeah, so we're going to get it. But by the time we're going to get recognized, remember when the Makonde got recognized, personally I asked, like, who are the Makonde? There was nothing to really understand about them. I don't want the same people to ask about the Nubi. So we have a lot of people here who can write a lot of stories. We need to actually be able to speak to the people. And this book has a whole chapter that you can literally plagiarize. Actually, not one chapter, 3 chapters that you can literally plagiarize with permission, obviously, and transplant it here, and people reading it, like John, who the first time I met him, he asked me a very nasty question, and I'm like, which world is he coming from? But then I realized if somebody who is as well read as he has zero idea about what we are about as a community, then how about the other people there who don't even interact, people who are not even educated or who are not widely read and widely traveled? So you have a lot of work to do. So I really want to thank Alliance Française. I think this is not just a book launch, because yes, it's a book launch, but it's actually, what I can say, it's a prompt for us. It's an initiation for us. General couldn't be here, but can we ride from this book launch to start writing our own narratives? You know the whole story about the hunter will always be glorified until the day the lion. Yeah, so mwalimu, hata wewe ni mwalimu, anza kuandika story. The second I want to really thank is Alambo Consultancy, Baua. Where is Baua? She's always in the background. Yeah, she's disappeared, obviously. She's gone down. Yeah, always taking care. I really want to thank her for doing this. This is actually a selfless act. I don't think she's out to get any recognition or any political mileage or anything like that. So I really want to thank her for what she's done. And of course, our panelists, starting with Prof, are quite well spoken. I really enjoyed that. I hope somebody took the whole video, because you reading it and actually coming from your own, it was quite touching. I'm glad you got him to speak. And of course, Scholar Mahmoud, there's a whole things you can help us with. Dr. Fauzia Ahmed and Zamobed and our ambassador. And finally, I want to thank, okay, not last but not least, then finally, I want to really thank John Sibi Okumu, JSO as we call him, and I hope you can continue the interaction with our community. There's a lot of people you can really, what's the right word, motivate here, inspire. I'm sure over the dinner you can tell a lot of people. I'm one of the people that you really inspired when we had our conversation. So I really want to thank you for being part of this, and hopefully you can use the platforms that you have and the networks that you have to help us as a community. Not help in the sense of we are weak and everything, but help in the sense of it is a partnership that we can actually work together. And finally, I want to thank all those who are in attendance on behalf of the organizers, all of you guys. I think you guys were sitting here. When I was invited, I was told I should wear a Nubian attire. So I'll finish off with that one. I want to thank all of you guys, but also to throw something at you. I was told to wear a Nubian attire. What's a Nubian attire? My uncle who's here, he's wearing a very nice kanzu and an Omani kofia. And I'm wondering, did I wear the wrong thing? Then I looked at some of my seniors, and I was wondering. Then I saw our scholar here, and I thought I'm aligned with him. But then I couldn't tell. I want to tell John this, and I'm sure it's going to be a conversation. So for the ladies, no issue. You can see we're supposed to be colorful. Grubaba. I just point to Grubaba. The lower part is grubaba, chemise, tob, and you're supposed to be as colorful as possible. For the men, what I know is, for us, is the suit and a tie. But there's a contradiction there. You had us hammering the British, and here we are wearing it as a tradition. And we have our face, yeah, which is a legacy from the tax. So I understand that is what our traditional cloth is as a man attire. Yeah, I can see a lot of people following my style. We didn't plan, but then I see other people wearing, I don't know, kitenge, what, kanzu. So I think that speaks to the last point. As I thank all of you guys, what is our identity? And I know John had asked me this, but you answered it well. Are we Nubi? Are we Nubians? Which is a language? Which is a tribe? Are we really a tribe? all that doesn't really matter because he also answered it very well. If you go to America, Americans are citizens, they have no land. So I think we really need to redefine our identity. And I'll finish off by saying, one of the things that maybe for me I was able to do, but I've seen a lot of people, my age mates, people who are older. I remember very well, I won't mention her name, one of my aunties literally was trying to avoid being identified as a Nubi. Why? Because of marginalization. That goes back to the issue of marginalization, the issue of victimization and repression and so on. There are a lot of Nubis. If you go to Kisumu, go to Isiolo, go to Tanzania. Tanzania, I know a very prominent person whose name is Nubi. He actually eventually, I said, this name is Nubi. Then he eventually told me, yeah, my grandfather was Nubi. But he didn't identify himself as Nubi. We've lost our identification as Nubis, our pride. And I think once we get recognition, when we get that recognition, all of a sudden, you'll see even, as John once told me, everybody now will even claim to be a Nubi. Even he will claim to be a Nubi because they can see something. But that is where we have to go. Somalis at one time, when they came to Kenya, not Kenya, when it came to Nairobi, a lot of the Somalis, you remember there were Somalis who tried to identify themselves as not Somalis. But you know, their hair, their color betrayed them. For the Nubis, a lot of the Nubis, they'll go pretend they are Swahilis. If you go to Mombasa, there are Nubis who will not even think they are Nubis. But once we get recognition, education, economic empowerment, that is the narrative we need to create. So for the person who asked about the future, I think even having this event here, the pictures taken, please share them. Please talk about all this. I'm going to, of course, say that I was with John and he's talking, and then people will be wondering, what is all this? How can John go to these Nubis? But that is part of our identity. So I really want to thank all of you guys. You have started, you are continuing the journey started by this great man. And for the people going back to Uganda, tell him that he's really an inspiration for all of us. And we are celebrating him as a living legend. Thank you very much. All right, so dinner is served and downstairs, please.
Studio, Papa, dunia jet fire out. Itajina hurkan tamasu makalambe bitawe kalabara jama. Bugawe, ome bugawe, rikata wasewe. Umo malumana. Malumana nare nayade Abuba malumana nare nayao Ade manre mizami bo manre we bira dunia Manre nide anzipia bongo sudeba Manre dere adoro Mama mi ujami tozambaro mimbati ado Ikinida ako Lakini tinjaro tumini mbatia were duzo iya Ikinida ako Iga mata pisi, iga mai pisi, ikini mayo, dere adunia ya bongo su diri adone do jinelo choko do bongo su kwangira singareka ngardongo bongo di simeko adaro bongo di simeko bongo di ajale gandi wale mboti ya ado lo bare na rebande diri adoro no kweza iboro ile pafunjila ndedeka ile pafunjila imerujo Sandiro Chokoro dunia dia bade dere ado Mbaraka mbardongo Nakati mavula professor mbardongo Ane dere ado imiza miteke teke badi Nakule dine kudo
Hello?
Professor Tasila Kikatuni, Master for Master Jama.
This one.
The Atom General